Make sure. All right, good. You guys can hear me okay? Hey, thanks for all the thumbs up and everything. It's very interactive. You guys are awesome. And make sure that everybody is good. Elo, thanks for the comments. Mark, Jennifer, appreciate you guys. Special shout out to Sandra up in Wisconsin. Thanks for joining. A lot of new people. And you know what? It's a Sunday afternoon. I thought this would be a fun time for us to get together and talk about thinking, because it's like the lost art that really doesn't happen a whole lot. And this really came up for me because when I looked back in the 2000s, I realized that I was really good at optimistic thinking. I was like the guy that totally believed I could build the Great Wall of China in a week. And I was really good at it, but I had no other thinking. And so I came across years later a book by John Maxwell called Thinking for a Change. And it's kind of crazy. I've got unbelievable, I marked up like half the book. And it's because there was so much in there, and I thought this is good to review. I've read it 3 times, and I would encourage you guys to, after this, if you haven't read it or if you've already read it, read it again. It's a powerful thing because we're going to go into a bunch of different types of thinking. I'm going to give you examples. Some of you have sent in questions. I'm going to give you examples of how to process questions, how to think through things. And this could be something you're stuck on. It could be a big picture life thing. There's a lot of different reasons to touch on the different ways of thinking and to use the different strategies. And you guys have seen the infographics. We're going to talk about big picture, realistic, bottom line, all these different types of thinking. Again, I was really good at optimistic thinking, and it wasn't even really on, it was kind of in that group of 11, but it wasn't really there. And I was just really good at that one thing. So I'm going to give you guys some ideas on both the types of thinking and then how to think, how to think, like how to set yourself up. One of the things that I do is I have actual time blocks for thinking where I'll just pick, and it might be 15 minutes, it might be an hour, where I'm just going to sit there and think about stuff. And a number of people I've worked with over the years have adopted this, and it's been something, who knows where this came from. I think John Maxwell talked about it in his book 20 years ago. It's a very powerful concept to set aside time to actually think, and then to set your environment up so that you kind of bunker down and you've got a place where you can actually thrive and think, because it's really hard to think in the middle of chaos. The subtitle for this program today is going from chaos to clarity in times of uncertainty. We have a lot of uncertainty and we have a lot of chaos right now. And so what I'm going to help you do is develop your thinking muscle so that you can go into more clarity and leave a lot of the chaos, because this chaos is here right now. And for a lot of us, it's dominating our lives, CNN or Fox or whatever it is. And we're going to give you a chance to, my goal here is to give you guys some new tools and some ways that you can process your situation, whatever it is. What we're going to do is I'm going to develop the framework for you guys to have the ability to process a question. Because usually if there's a frustration, if we're stuck on something or we're wondering about something, it's just a question. And if we can frame the question and go through a process with that question, it actually gets us to a place of peace and stillness, something I wrote a lot about in Reinvented Life when I wrote that about 8 years ago. If we don't have stillness in our life, we can't really think because we're just like primal animals. And so I'm going to give you a chance to go through an example through this formula. It's the question and answer formula. We're going to go through that, and then I'm going to take a few of your questions that you guys submitted and process those through this thing. But the first thing I want to do is really talk about why we're changing our thinking, and the reason that we're changing our thinking is because there's a process where our thinking triggers and results in certain feelings. So for example, if you're thinking and you're not really thinking much, but you're just kind of reacting, you're going to have maybe a lot of feelings of fear and concern and angst. And so those will oftentimes lead to actions or inactions because of the emotion. So if we start thinking constructively versus just randomly and reactively, we'll shift our feelings will change our actions, and our actions will change our life. Because ultimately, our life is just a reflection of the actions, the behaviors, the habits, and it starts back in the thinking. And so we're gonna focus on that. That's that one thing we're gonna focus on. That's also part of our thinking, the 11, it's focused. That's one of our thinkings. here's one of the things that we're gonna start with, and I'm gonna use my notes here a little bit. We've got 3 different things that we're gonna start off with. We've got good thinking, we've got change thinking, and we've got intentional thinking. The first one with good, the reason that we have to have good thinking is because a lot of times we say, well, if we desire something, or if we think, if we've watched The Secret, that if I desire something and I really desire it, then it's going to result in something. And the reality is desire is not enough. It's got to be about thinking. It's got to be about better thinking. And so we're gonna shift this. One of the ways we shift it is we get really, really clear. If you guys remember back to peak life, we talked about purging. And purging was about the people, the environments, the stuff in our life that's not serving us. One of the things that is really important is to ask yourself, am I spending time with people that are amateurs or pros? And the reason that this is so important is because they influence us. And ultimately, we will become a byproduct of them. If we're around people that are just like us, we're going to stay just like us. We're never really going to elevate ourselves. And so when we're getting thinking from other people, if we're trying to have good thinking and we have a lot of amateurs that have bad thinking, we're going to stay amateurs. If we want to move our lives into a place where we're more of a pro, where we've got the ability to be at the top of whatever we're doing, we've got to be around pros. There's a story actually in the book about Mark Victor Hansen, who you'll remember was one of the co-authors of Chicken Soup, and he was around who was he around? He was around somebody that was very wealthy. It was Tony Robbins. And he said, Tony, I know you made like $150 million last year. And I'm making $1 million plus and I'm doing good, but how do I get around? How do I do that? How do I get to 100 million? And Tony said, who are you around? And he said, well, I have a mastermind. I'm around millionaires. And Tony said, that's the problem. And he said, what do you mean? He goes, you got to be around billionaires because right now you're stuck. And he shifted, and the history is pretty evident. There was 1 billion copies of Chicken Soup for the Soul sold. So it was a shift, and sometimes what we think is the right path is actually the wrong path for the things that are what we're wanting, our vision, our big picture, and we'll get into that. Again, it comes back to amateurs versus pros. Okay. So when we start thinking about growth thinking, and one of the things, if you shift your mentors and they go from millionaires to billionaires, or your neighborhood folks, people you went to school with, to millionaires, if you shift your thinking into growth thinking, you're going to outgrow whatever you're doing. So a good example of this is if you're thinking bigger and you're around people, you'll start to normalize around how they think. So you got to be really careful about your influences. And when that happens, it'll become obvious that the things that you're doing or that you were doing are no longer fit. So specific example, let's say everybody in your world makes $50,000 a year, and then you hang out in a mastermind where everybody's making $1 million plus. You're going to start doing things because you're going to be thinking differently that would result in making $1 million or more a year. It'll shift you, and you'll outgrow whatever you're doing. You'll stop thinking about how am I going to serve people one-on-one. You'll be thinking about systems. You'll be thinking about leverage. You'll be thinking about totally different things. So the growth thinking is critical and that's part of the good thinking, because it'll outgrow what you're currently doing, which results in a different life. Okay, so the change thinking, let's go into here. Different questions. One of the best questions, a different question is, there's this victim question called why me? Like, why did this happen to me? A lot of people are asking that right now. Why did I lose my job? Why is this happening to me? And so this critical sandwich middle is, why is it happening to me? A better question, a different question is, why is it happening for me? When you start asking that, we'll look at things differently. A great example right now with a lot of people that are being downsized or shifted, businesses are slowing down, you're stuck at home. I mean, that's where I'm bunkered, quarantined here at home. And one of the great things about this is like there's no air travel, none. And normally I'm on a plane 2, 3, 4 times a month. Right now, this is giving me a chance to spend a lot of time thinking about things that matter to you guys. And so I can spend more time focused, bunkering and hunkering. When I'm jumping around to airplanes and traveling all over the place, it's a lot harder. This is a great opportunity, and that's how I'm looking at it, because I'm asking a different question. And we can all do that. Just ask, why is this happening for me? It's a totally different question. All right, so compressing time is another changed thinking. This actually came up in a conversation this last week, and you know who you are. Kylie, we talked about this. It's a question of how long do things take? And I think it was Parkinson's law, where whatever time we give something is the amount of time it'll take. Now, if you say I'm going to train for the Olympics and you give yourself 2 days, I actually, funny story, back when I was in high school, I had this like elementary crush, and this girl left the state, and then she came back. I found out she was coming back a couple of days later, and I thought, I need to become an Adonis. So I started doing push-ups, and I started running back and forth in my hall at my house, and I was thinking, I'm going to be Superman for this girl when she shows up. And this is what 13-year-olds think. And so I was trying to compress time there, and that was irrational. That was like crazy. But in general, we give ourselves too much time. So this conversation I had this last week, the question I asked was, how long are you going to give yourself to be accountable to this thing that you're going to do? And the answer was 2 weeks. And I said, really? And there, I could tell there was like this smile. And I said, is it going to take you 2 weeks? And the answer was no. And I said, okay, how long? And the answer was 2 days. Oftentimes we tend to hesitate because it's safer. We think if we make a decision, there's going to be pain. And so we stay in the space of it'll take longer, I'll give myself more time, and we stretch it. And all we do is delay. And then we give ourselves more time. When we compress things rationally, we can get a lot of stuff done. And that's a form of changed thinking. How long does this really take? Another great question. How long is it really going to take for me to decide which type of investing I'm going to do? How long is it going to take for me to decide what kind of fitness program I'm going to do? Okay, good. In an hour, you're going to have your plan. 2 hours. And then you can start. It's not I'm going to spend a month investigating. I mean, that's crazy. That's poor thinking. That's not good thinking. That's not changed thinking. And then the last part of this structure here is the intentional thinking. So one of the things that's valuable for all of us to do is write down your thinking to clarify what the heck you think and what you think you know. The reason that I write a lot of books is to clarify my thinking, to figure out if I actually understand anything. And once I write something down, I read it and I think, wow, I've got gaps. And we don't oftentimes know that we have gaps until we actually do the work called writing. So part of this is, and by the way, I forgot to mention this, there's a couple of worksheets that you can download at DamionLupo.com, just a little bit of fill in the blank type of stuff. I always, always, always recommend you to have something to write and a piece of paper, always. There's something magical about a pen and a piece of paper. It's like this transference of energy, and it keeps you engaged. Physiologically, it keeps you engaged. When you start writing how you're thinking, and I'm going to show you how I write through my questions, it's going to help you understand your understanding. You'll be able to think about your thinking, which is a very high-level thing to do. Thinking about your thinking, you can't really do that if it's very hard to observe yourself observing. That probably was way too crazy woo for you guys. But if you think about it, you're thinking right now, you're thinking about, okay, what am I going to have for dinner? Well, if you put that down and then you're looking at it, and you can think about your thinking. You can look at that and go, okay, does that actually serve what I want to do with my life and my body? I'm going to have hot dogs and Twinkies. Is that really serving anything? Okay, but when you're thinking about it right now in the moment, oh my gosh, I'm starving. What's in front of me? I'm going to grab it. So this allows you to get very clear. That's part of the clarity. It clarifies and it gives you a stillness because you can actually see it. It's not just jumbling around in your head. One of the other things that I do is I write in this thing every day. This is my 10-year journal. It doesn't actually say that on there, but you guys can see this maybe. It says 10-year journal. You can get them on Amazon. And it allows me to put down my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences every day. It takes a couple of minutes, and I can see and go back in time and then notice trends, notice how I'm thinking, notice how I'm evolving or devolving, how emotional I'm getting, whether I'm stuck on something, whether I'm actually thinking, or whether I'm just going through motions in the rat race. It's a very powerful thing to have that daily. It's also part of the Savers formula from Hal Elrod's book, The Morning Miracle. Highly recommend having a journal of some sort. That one's easy because it's 4 lines. I mean, how long does it take to write 4 lines? It gets you in the habit as well. Okay, so to have, there's this 5-part formula for intentional thinking, the 5 rights. So the right thinking plus the right people plus the right environment plus the right time plus the right reason equals the right results. So here's what this means. When you have the right thinking, good thinking, change thinking, you have the right people that are around you, and we're going to talk about that with the shared thinking. You have the right environment, so you're not thinking in the middle of, like, it's really hard to think about your life if you're racing down the street, being chased by the police, or you're stressed out and you're running out of money and you're trying to think big picture. It's challenging. So there's an environment, like where you want to be. If you've got children screaming at you, a little hard to be strategic. It's more just reactive and, oh my gosh, please make it stop. The time is critical. You're not going to think about this at the wrong time. Thinking strategically when your house is on fire is generally a very bad idea. If you think, okay, well, what would I do if my house is on fire? Meanwhile, it's burning around you. You're just going to die. So the timing, and then the reason for the thinking. Why the heck are you doing it? One of the things that's important about all this stuff is to understand with the questions you're asking, do they actually matter? Because a lot of times we spend so much time thinking about stuff, trying to figure out solutions, and it doesn't even matter. And why doesn't it matter? Because if you look at your actual life vision, when you get clarity on that, it doesn't make any difference. Some of these questions that we mull on and we get stuck in for days, weeks, months, sometimes years, literally don't matter. We just get stuck and we get fixated on these things. So the timing and the reason, very, very important. Let's go back to, is it a fire? Now, I know for a lot of you guys right now, your lives are on fire. So I don't take this lightly. It's also important to acknowledge that we've got a lot of fires that are going on in the media that aren't our fires. And it's important for us to acknowledge them, things that are smart, like social distancing, like don't go hang out in a crowd right now. That's smart. That's kind of like pouring gasoline on sparks at the gas station. Like, why would you start smoking right next to a gas station? That's stupid. So the point is, most of us aren't on fire. Now, if we are, there's some other thinking that we're going to get into, like shared thinking, to get help and formalize to create a formula around that. But the most important thing is to be able to plan. What we've seen, what I'm seeing, is that most people didn't have a plan. They got confused thinking that a bull market and everything that was happening the last 10 years would just keep going on as if gravity doesn't actually happen. And so there wasn't a plan. There's a great quote, and I'm going to share a story. A good friend of mine that was a Navy SEAL, and the quote is that we don't rise to the level of our ability. We don't rise to the occasion. What we do is we drop down to the level of our training. So no matter how optimistic and how excited and how focused we are, ultimately it's going to be, however we're going to react is based on our training. And so if you don't have a plan for your house being on fire, you might just sit there and get burned up. I was talking to a good friend of mine a couple of years ago, and we were talking about real estate and investing. And this will apply to a lot of you guys, because I know a lot of you are either doing real estate investing or wanting to do it. And we were talking about debt and buying real estate, and he said, I don't want to buy real estate with any debt. And I said, why is that? And he said, it's risky. And I said, what do you mean risky? you were a Navy SEAL. Like, you're one of the biggest badasses out there ever. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, you guys are like fearless. He goes, no, we're a bunch of chickens. And I was like, wait, what? The Navy SEALs? He said, no, we just train. We train so it's automatic. We train so that no matter what happens, it's an autonomic response. It's like breathing. We don't think about it. It just happens. He said, most of the guys that are SEALs are not like what we see in the movies. They're not out there wanting to take risks. In fact, they try to pull all the risks out, and they train. So when your house catches on fire, the random event, whether that's your house, your life, your business, whatever, you've had training, so you go into a mode of, I already know how this goes. My martial arts training was the same way. I spent the last 20 years training, so I don't think about it. When I'm moving around, I'm not thinking, I wonder if I am going to have to do something if somebody tries to attack me. It's so baked into me. It's like anything else that you spend 10, 20,000 hours doing. It's just automatic. So the question is, what are you doing in terms of planning? And right now, most of y'all's houses, I know some of you have your houses on fire. I get that. A lot of us, it's not on fire, and it could be. So the question is, how are we going to think through the questions? How are we going to plan so that we actually have a plan in case something happens? For example, like, let's say right now everything is good, and next month income stops. And we're going to go into a couple of y'all had some questions about this and what to do right now, and we're going to go through those questions, because that's planning in advance. So you have a plan, and you're not just, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. In all likelihood, if you look at Chris Martinson's work with what we're going through with CV19, the exponential growth curve is going to continue doing what it's doing. It's growing. It's a geometric exponential curve, which means we're going to have a lot more people that are going to get sick. The logistics chains are going to be messed up. This is going to be a reality. So things will continue to change. Some good, a lot bad. So we need to be prepared for that, so that if the house catches on fire in our own lives, we're ready to go. All right, let's go to our next thing here. Let's go to our 11 things. Let me just check in real quick, see if you guys had anything that I can answer. All right. Oh, hey guys. Hey Julie. Mark, I don't know exactly what you were referring to. I think it's always valuable to remember where you came from. One of I remember when I thought I was holier than thou, and like I was the coolest and the smartest and the most invincible, and it was a humbling experience. My thinking was not rational, and I got brought to my knees. I thought that I was better than people, and because I had made all that money in the 2000s, that I couldn't be hurt. I thought I was truly 10 feet tall and bulletproof. So reflecting back is helpful to remember where you came from. All right, okay. So we're going to talk about the 11 types of thinking now. We're going to get into them. The first one is the big picture thinking. Many of you have heard of the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I forget which habit it is, but keeping the main thing is incredibly important. Big picture, we need to think about the main thing. Just because maybe an investment goes sideways or something doesn't mean it's the main thing. The main thing is usually something much bigger. So in terms of big picture, one of the things that we can do is excuse ourselves from the drama. And I'm talking about excusing ourselves from watching the news all the time right now because we're bunkered and hunkered down. It's excusing ourselves from the conversations. And it doesn't mean you have to be a dick. You can literally be kind and just say, I'd prefer not to talk about this. And sometimes it's a little awkward, and there's a natural curiosity. But keeping the big picture in perspective, if you're filling your mind with all sorts of noise around the crisis that's out there, you're not really going to be able to focus much energy on the big picture. So it helps us to think about that, and also not being naive to the fact that, hey, stuff's going on. So if we develop if we ask questions like, okay, there's a crisis going, how do I deal with the crisis? How do I have a plan for that? Maybe it's some rice and beans, maybe it's a face mask, it's planning to be at home, it's all these different things. Robert Kiyosaki was talking about his experience in, I think it was Y2K, or I forget when it was, one of the crises, and he said, okay, well, this is happening, or maybe it's not. He prepared. He went and spent $1,000 at Costco, put all this food in his storage unit, and then Y2K happened, and then nothing happened. And he took that stuff and he dropped it all off at the food bank. He was prepped and done. The value in that is that you can stop obsessing about it. And it can be challenging, like right now. Okay, where do we get the food? Right now, we've got access, most of us have access to food and things. It's a really good idea to do as much preparation in advance. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a crisis, you do as much as you can, as well as you can. But just thinking through the stuff, the whole point of that is once you've taken your countermeasures and you have a plan in place, you can focus on the big picture, your life, not just whatever event is going on, because there's always an event. Like there's a North Korean missile launch, or there's a riot somewhere, there's something breaking out. And this is a very real event. It's also not going to destroy humanity. And most of us are going to be on the other side of this, and we need to think about big picture. Where are we going to take our lives? What's beyond this? We're all in this together, and most of us are going to be together on the other side. Okay, number two, focused. Focused thinking is about having focused questions, and it's about having a focused life. When you ask a question, it's very important to ask a question that's deliberate and it's not just all over the place. It's important to have a focused life and not be distracted by all sorts of, I call them drunk squirrels that are chasing nuts. Like we tend to act like that. We're always chasing things. We're all over the place. And another option is to simply focus, being willing to say no to almost everything. That's the difference. I think Warren Buffett said it. The difference between successful and ultra successful people is ultra successful people say no to almost everything. And when you get in the habit of that, it does two things. One, it keeps your life very calm because you're not out there putting out fires of dumb decisions. And it opens space, keeps space open for really, really powerful things for you to be involved with. So staying focused. One of the strategies around this is bunkering. If you're going to focus and you're going to have the time to think, it's about going to a place where right now most of us are bunkered or quarantined in our homes, finding a place where we can focus, we can drop down. And I know this can be challenging with kids and with lives and distractions and gizmos. One of the ways that I do it is I turn everything off and I just use pen and paper to think. Nothing can get in the way. I close the door, I lock out the world, and nothing can get in. I mean, literally, the White House could be on fire and I wouldn't know because I'm focused and I'm bunkering, and it's because focused thinking is very, very important. Third one is creative thinking. This is kind of going back to when we were kids, and we had Crayola crayons, and it's about getting that inner curiosity and creative juice to just flow. Interesting fact: 12 million Crayolas on a normal day, if assuming Crayola and the company is operating, 12 million Crayolas are made a day. I didn't know that. I was just refreshing and looking through the book, and that was one of the facts in there. There is so much creative genius in us. All of us, you guys watching, it's in you. And it's a question of, are you allowing it out? As children, if you look at kids, they're just creative. They're all over the place. They're thinking, they're making up imaginary friends, they're drawing, they're having a good old time. And then something happens. We get afraid. We start to become afraid of judgment, that if we are creative, people are going to look at us funny because we're going to be like the crazy person. The truth is, everything is crazy before it's normal. And when you start to think with creative thinking about the Crayola, taking a Crayola and just like drawing, it's amazing what starts to come up, but you have to actually do something. You can't just say, okay, I'm creative. Like, you have to be willing to be a little bit weird. This is kind of like the weird thinking. The next one is realistic thinking. Okay, so this is one of the ones that got me in trouble. Really, in a lot of trouble. Because I was Mr. Opportunistic, an opportunity guy, and what that led to was me standing on railroad tracks with trains. Amtrak is cruising by, and I'm on there going, I'm going to be able to jump over the train, or it'll go around me. And I was not being realistic at all. I was just being optimistic that everything was going to be good. It's like, unfortunately, people that thought the stock market was going to continue to do good. It is a manipulated roller coaster casino. And just to give you perspective, in 1929, when the stock market crashed, it didn't come back to that break-even point until 1954. That was 25 years. So that's reality. We are absolutely 100%, no doubt, we are going into a depression that is going to last more than a week and a half. It is not going to be business as usual at Easter. I mean, it's optimistic thinking and totally unrealistic, because the thing that there's so much that has happened and will continue to happen with this breakout because of the medical implications and the logistics of having everything shut down. So realistic thinking is about being rational, and it's not about smoking hopium, guys. It's about being totally rational about what's going on. And it doesn't mean you're going to be pessimistic. There are times to be pessimistic. We'll get to how this is actually effective when you go to possibility thinking. One of my grand mistakes in 2005-06, I ended up buying an apartment complex in Memphis, and I did this whole strategy, and we'll get into it in the next page, around identifying best case, worst case, most likely case. It's called a sensitivity study. And I went through the whole thing. I thought, realistically, I'm going to make this much. The investors are going to make this much. We're all here, and downside, it's going to be this much. What I didn't realize was that it could be very, very different if anything went badly. So my worst case was not quite the worst case. In fact, when that property went, I lost the property. It ended up after I lost a couple million, then I went to foreclosure, and then the lender sued me. So, I mean, I didn't know you could be sued after you got foreclosed on. It's called a deficiency. And I thought, I've already lost this thing. And then the lender came after him. We spent 2 years in court. And he was a very, very smart guy. And he thought he could get away with suing me and grabbing an extra $1 million. Fortunately, I went through that process, and he was a criminal. And so he lost. I mean, that was great. It still took 2 years of my life. I just didn't have the thinking around realistic because I didn't know what realistic was because I hadn't been through it before. We're going to get to shared thinking, and this is one of the values in having other people that are either bald or gray, have been around for 20 years, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different cycles. It gives you perspective. Now, if somebody were to show me their best case, their worst case, their most likely case, I'd say, cool. And what about the other one, the black swan case, or the things that you're not thinking about? Because there's stuff that I would know to ask. People that have been around through cycles have different questions. Different questions give you different perspective. All right, next one. Oh, and one thing on realistic thinking. This is coming up a lot because right now there's a vacuum for leadership, and at all different levels, whether it's the national level or the local level, we're looking for leadership in this time of kind of chaos and crisis. And part of realistic thinking and communication, and this is important for you to be thinking and also communicating, is to be realistic and understand you're not going to please everybody. Some of the politicians out there, I think, are trying to please everybody, and what they're doing is giving us some information that we're just not, we're trusting less and less because it keeps changing all the time, and it doesn't seem like it's very realistic. So realistic also helps you it helps for you to communicate in a way through your thinking that people will respect you and trust you, that you're not just pie in the sky. Very important, especially if you have people that are looking up to you, that are trusting you, that you're on a team with. We need realistic thinking more than we need just pie in the sky thinking. That's not going to do very well, other than maybe making people feel happy for a minute, but then they see reality and they go, well, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. And then you lose the trust. Okay, the next one is strategic thinking. So this is the bridge between now and the future. And so if we think about where we are now, the future is almost anything we want. The reason I like to look at 10 years down the road in terms of a time frame is because you can develop almost any skills, any networks over a 10-year period to create almost any life. I mean, virtually any life. Now, if you say I want to be an elephant, or I want to go to Mars on my own with my own spaceship, I mean, probably unlikely. But strategic thinking will give you a way to process how you're going to do this whole now to there. One of the things that we'll have to do, all of us, is develop new skills and tools this next 10 years. Over the last 10 years, one of the things I knew that was important was to understand and develop the ability to speak to people, to go to groups, and be able to look into a camera and speak without doing this or looking around or choking up and that kind of stuff. So the skill set required me to go be very, very awkward. I still remember the first time I went to a large audience, and it was probably 300 people. And I went to the bathroom. I peed about, I think it was 6 times in like the 20, 25 minutes leading up. My body was just malfunctioning. It was a mess. I mean, it's kind of funny thinking about it. I was like, how do I have to pee this much? Like it was just, that's what I had to go through. my body was in a state of panic, like something is going to eat you on stage. And I went up there, who knows what I said? I don't know if I said anything. I think I said something. People clapped, probably a sympathy clap, and then I moved on. And over the last couple of years, I've been speaking 20, 30, 40, 50 times a year, and it's developed a skill set. So now it's normal, just throw a camera up or ask me to go on stage. And the point of that is it was super awkward and it was terrible. If you want a skill set that's going to provide for that vision for your life, the strategic part of thinking is, okay, what do I need to learn and who do I need to become and who do I need help from that could help me in that process? So it's how do I evolve and who is going to be the team that's going to help me get from here to there? These are two strategic questions. What do I shift and who do I need help from? Okay, possibility number 6. So this is the what if. This is the what if I had the skills? What if? When we think about big questions about doing big things, one of the things I think it's really important for us to understand is technology and microprocessors are speeding up. So things that were not possible, and I think Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis talk about this a lot. I think that's where it came from. The things that we might want to do now that are impossible are very likely possible 3, 4, or 5 years down the road because computers will be faster and able to process autonomous cars, having a computer in our phone, the ability to do all sorts of things, to be able to do this right now, to have a Zoom in 4K, almost as clear as us being in the same room. That technology didn't exist 10, 20 years ago. It was because of the speed of microprocessors and technology and artificial intelligence. So if you think forward and you say, well, okay, what could I do, and assume that the technology is going to be there, that's one way to shift your possibility instead of saying, well, there's no way that's possible. There's no way. 10 years ago, most people would say there's no way cars could drive by themselves. The technology didn't work because it wasn't fast enough. The cars couldn't react to all these things. Now, because of LiDAR and these technologies that work from video boards, video games, like who knew that video games were going to be an influence on autonomous driving? Because of the technology there and the acceleration of microprocessors, we're at the point that this is going to be reality. So if you start thinking about possibility, what might be, and instead of blocking yourself based on the past, this is where the next one, or a few down the road, the shared thinking, having people help you think through that stuff is going to be really, really valuable. Because if you block yourself and say, well, the way it's always been is the way it's always going to be, you're not really going to have much of a big future. You're going to kind of have your past. It's going to be like Groundhog Day. We don't want that. We need to think about possibility. What's possible? What would my life look like if I made 10 times as much money right now? If I impacted 10 times as many people? What could that look like? What might I do? It's these questions, and it's the way that we frame them that'll start opening up our creative juices and tap into this whole almost mystical opportunity pool. And so possibility, what's possible? Your past is not your future unless you choose it. It's truly a choice. It's not predetermined. It's not preordained. Destiny, all this stuff, we say, well, there's a glass ceiling or whatever the rules that you've come up with, your belief systems. The reality is, if you can fix your thinking, you can fix everything and you can define your life. It's totally a choice. Okay. Oh, one of the things, I'm going to write this on here. One of the things in Jim Collins' book, I think it was Good to Great, it might have been Built to Last. It's called BHAG. John Maxwell has it in there as well. This is, if you want to shift your possibility thinking, a big, hairy, audacious goal, or big, hairy-ass goal, this is, if you really just think about it, it's like going to the moon or being a billionaire or learning how to be a pilot or whatever those big goals are. A big, really big one, like a hairy one, like there's no way you know how to do this. If you have a goal right now and you go, yeah, here are the 5 steps I need to do, it's not big enough. It won't stretch you. Ted Turner's dad died, and one of the things Ted Turner said was, it's important to have a goal that you will not be able to accomplish in your lifetime. And I forget why that was a big deal for his dad dying, but he just remembered his dad had accomplished a lot, and Ted said, you got to have something that pulls you. It's like a gravitational force. And so I remember him saying that and thinking, okay, what goal could I create that would be beyond my ability to do? And so right now my goal is a million people that have their financial shackles broken, so that money's not part of the equation. Like in Forrest Gump, when he bought that, I think it was Apple stock, and he said, yeah, money, just one less thing to think about now that I'm a gazillionaire. It's the same thing. That is the goal. It's to have a million of you guys financially free, not just with passive income, but with the muscles to where it doesn't matter what happens to your investments, to the world. You literally are free. Mentally, you're free. You know that you've got the confidence to be able to create. That is my BHAG. Okay, number 7, reflective. So reflective starts with gratitude. One of the things that I do every year is do my goals, like a lot of you guys, do my goals in December for the next year. Before I do that, though, I spend at least a day or two reflecting back on the previous year. I go through and I think about all the experiences, all the people, all the books, and it's a gratitude list. Reflection starts with a deep sense of gratitude for everything in our lives. I mean, the great food, the relationships, like all those things. My iPhone, sometimes I'm grateful, sometimes I'm a little bit annoyed. There's something powerful about the energy when you start with gratitude. It makes it so that when you want something for the future, you're not making what you've already had wrong. And that's a big problem that most people, when they do goals, they don't actually acknowledge what they've already got. And it makes it wrong, like their previous stuff, like that's not good enough. It's a very strange energy. So reflective starts with gratitude. And then it also, when you reflect back, it provides perspective. So when you think back about all the things you've been through and you reflect, there's all these lessons that are baked in. And it's valuable to look at those, because wealth is not about the money. It's about the lessons. It's about the experiences of going through life, stubbing your toe, falling down, getting up, learning, losing money, making money. Mostly losing money is where the wealth is created. Sounds a little weird, but that's true. Because if you make money, it may not make you wealthy. It may just make you stupid. Money tends to make us stupid. The mistakes make us stronger, because usually we go through them, we're still alive. And if you're watching right now, you're still alive after whatever you've done. Reflecting back on that allows us to create wisdom that we can go through life into the next thing, the next opportunity, with a sense of emotional intelligence. Been through that, understand that. That's why when y'all come to me and you say, well, here's the stuff, I know this fast, right now. Here's what's coming. It's just obvious. And it's because I've been through it. So emotionally, our emotions act way faster than our conscious mind can think through things. And so it takes seconds, maybe minutes, but usually seconds to understand what's coming. Reflective will help you to start developing those instincts. Those instincts are critical. In, I would say, like late 90s, very beginning of my career, early 20s, there was a tenant I had when I had my first, it was actually my very first house that I ever owned. And I had rented it out to a lady, and she actually broke in. Her name was Paula Scott. She broke into the house while I was in Dallas on a trip and squatted and proceeded to not pay. She would pay my mortgage directly, but not me. She'd pay one of the mortgages, not both of them. She was playing games. She knew what she was doing. I had no idea. I was like optimistic, and I was getting my ass handed to me. And after 18 months, we were in court, different courts. And after 18 months, I thought, I've lost it. Like, I'm going to lose my mind here. I'm literally losing control. And I got to a breaking point. And in order for me to not literally go after her, like, because I was so furious, and it was bad. I mean, you guys, when somebody has drug you along, and many of you have had people steal from you, I've had those experiences. People steal from you, they abuse you, they slander you. Like, this is kind of part of the experience of going through life when you're really living purposefully. It's going to happen. I said, okay, my choice is right now, go find her and just like beat her. Or what's another option? Better question, what else could I do? I went to Sedona, and I went to one of my favorite places called the Enchantment Resort, and it probably saved both her and our lives. I went up there and I reflected for 3 days. I just sat there and I thought about everything, and what I realized was that it was just a house. and it was just money. It was, granted, it was $30,000. It gave me the ability when I was in reflective thinking to calm things down. And I was also in a really great environment. So it allowed me to take a pause and appreciate this beauty and let it go. Turned it over to the attorneys, and she was gone. It didn't take much more than another month or two, and she was gone. It almost broke me spiritually, and I needed the reflective. Sometimes when we think things are totally out of control and our lives are ending, it's really just about going into a space of reflective thinking. All right, popular thinking. There's a lot of popular thinking right now. Everybody's got an opinion on this. I have an opinion. I've shared some of my opinions with you about what's going on. The problem with popular thinking is that it tends to come from extreme fear or greed. Y'all have noticed this, I'm sure, when you watch the news. It's a red alert like all the time now. There's just a red bar, and it's because our primal instincts are focused on danger. And when there's danger, we want to make sure we're not going to die, so we pay attention. So most of the people, a population, is going to be focused on danger. They're not going to be thinking about their thinking. They're going to be focused on, how is this whatever going to kill me? And so why does the news lead with whoever's died that day? Because it's drama and people will stay focused on it. Popular thinking can be very, very dangerous. It's what led to a lot of people getting involved in real estate back in 2005 and 6 and going off a cliff. Everybody was buying houses. They were buying their second and third house, and they thought, this is amazing. That popular thinking also led to me making a bunch of money in 04 and 05 and then saying, you know what? Everybody else is making tons of money. I'm going to go jump into this thing again. And what did I do? I got my butt kicked. And it was because I joined the popular thinking, and me and the sheep all went off to slaughter. We got absolutely decimated. A lot of people have done the same thing. It happens when you have, it's the psychology of masses. It's like mass hysteria. See it in the markets. You see things happening and they don't quite make sense, but if enough people get together, it's just how we operate. There's a primal instinct. We act as animals and we want to be protected, so we stay in groups. We don't want to be all by ourselves. So whatever the masses are doing, it must be safe. Just think about that. That's what we're thinking. If we're behind our thinking, we're doing that to be safe. If everybody else is doing it, I probably won't die because the wolf won't come in and eat me. But that's kind of what's happening right now. There's just a lot of people that are following whatever hysteria is out there. Popular thinking is usually a great thing to be contrarian with, meaning whatever is popular, kind of do the opposite. And you'll end up finding that a lot of times you're not doing anything. One of the things that I get a lot right now is people saying, okay, well, I want to do multifamily investing. And I go, okay, cool. So they want to invest in apartments, or they want to invest in houses. And I say, that's interesting. Why? And they go, well, because the deal looks good. And I go, okay, based on what? And they go, well, here's the deal structure. And I go, was that like from a month ago, before the entire economy was more or less ground to a halt? And the other question is, what's this going to look like in 6 months? And so I'm going to get into a couple of examples that you guys sent in, but popular thinking can be historical thinking, and it can have zero to do with the future if the rules have all changed. And a lot of the rules have changed, like a lot of the rent growth and these different things, these assumptions. Popular thinking has a lot of assumptions, but not very much critical thinking involved. That's going to get a lot of you guys into trouble if you're not challenging the popular thinking. And just understand, popular thinking is not really all that much thinking. Okay, let's go to shared thinking. This is one of the things I think is the most valuable. And it's funny. It's like there's a book called The Most Important Thing. And every chapter is the most important thing. And it made me laugh when I read it. And I thought, well, wait, what's the most important thing? Well, they were all important, just like these are all important. Shared thinking is very important because it has to do with other people that are mentors, that are trusted, that you respect, and being a part of shared thinking. Shared thinking is a lot faster than solo thinking. There's a synergy around it. It's generally smarter, because you're going to flesh out your misbeliefs, things that are wrong. Shared thinking is vital in a time of high emotion. there's, I have conversations in groups now, and every once in a while there's somebody that will pop up and literally has to be beat down because the ego and the greed is driving the thinking. And we just have to say, hey, stop. You can tell that there's not a lot of thinking going on when somebody has their mouth going and they're the least educated. The value in being in groups is to know when you've got people that have more wisdom and have more experience and asking a question and then zipping it. You can learn so much. Shared thinking works if you actually listen. It doesn't work if you're just talking the whole time. There's a combination of talking and listening. Just keep that in mind. The mentors, I've had a mentoring group or I've had a mastermind for years and years and years. When I don't, I feel like there's something missing. It's because I'm just in my head. And we need to be out with other people. And now it's fairly easy. There's Zoom, there's all these different virtual environments. You guys can all have this in your life. All right. Unselfish thinking. So one of the things about unselfish is that part of your questions with anything you're doing is about you, and part of it probably needs to be about other people. Like when you're asking the questions, should I do this, or is this a good idea, or whatever, one of the things is, how can this benefit other people? Is there another way that this can benefit other people? And how much more can I benefit other people? It will help you shift into a space of abundance versus just scarcity. If we're just thinking about what's my return on my investment, and well, you know what, I can give you a great return. It's called a strip club. They produce tons of cash, but is that selfish or is it unselfish? I don't know. That's just about making a lot of cash flow. But are you really doing anything good? Maybe. Depends on your belief systems. My suggestion is finding a question that taps into the ability to serve others with whatever you're doing, whether it's your business, it's your community, it's how you interact with your congregation, whatever that looks like. Really, really important to find unselfish thinking and make it so that your thinking is beyond just you. It's beyond you. It's your kids, it's your spouse, it's your family, it's your community. It's how you serve. When you look at people, this makes me bananas when I see people like Elizabeth Warren or AOC, and they're talking about how billionaires didn't do it themselves. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's right. They had a whole bunch of people out there. You know what they also did? They created something that benefited a lot of people. They didn't go into a bank and just steal the money. I mean, like right now, why is Amazon hiring 100,000 people? Because their system that Jeff Bezos dreamt up has the ability to serve a ton of people, and it's working to serve a ton of people. So is that criminal? Apparently, according to some people, it's criminal, and it shouldn't be. Just because that's happening. Now, I don't think there should be special benefits, to somebody to make them an extra billion. What I think is that we should get out of the way of things as long as they're not hurting somebody. And I think that this is my opinion. This is my thinking. My thinking is serving more people is beneficial to society. And so being unselfish, how are you going to serve more? If Jeff Bezos said, hey, I'm going to stay in college, get a job, I'm not going to serve anybody, there'd be no Amazon. Maybe you think that's a great idea. Somebody was going to come up with a logistics system that would serve more people faster, where it was like Star Trek. Push a button, bam, something shows up on your door an hour later. Unselfish will truly shift you from scarcity to abundance. It's asking the question, how can I serve more people? This is huge. When in my hedonistic days in the 2000s, I was really good at consuming. I was really good at it. And I think a lot of us have gotten pretty good at this the last 10 years because it's been a bull. Everything's been booming and we can do whatever we want. We could travel, we could eat out, all this kind of stuff. I think a lot of people miss the other one, the contribution. And these have to work in lockstep in circulation. Contributing to other people will make your life more fulfilled. You might feel successful because you had a really expensive bottle of wine or something. The question is, are you going to actually feel fulfilled all the time with contribution, with work that you're doing, the value that you have on other people? That's what life's about. It's not just about consuming and making yourself feel good because you had a really, really expensive Kobe steak or something, or you have the biggest house in the neighborhood. Like, okay, interesting, but you know what? That's not why. That's not why you're here. That's a side effect. And so thinking about the unselfish thinking will get you to a place where it's more about the contribution and the circulation, totally shifting your life. Let's go to the bottom line. The bottom line is, What does objective reality say? Meaning when we're actually looking at the bottom line and we're asking these questions, what is it? What is the bottom line? What do the numbers say? I ask that all the time, and it's one of my favorite questions. When somebody has a story, if you guys start talking to me about something and you have a question and you're trying to figure out your life or your finances or your investing, I'm going to go right for the number jugular. I'm going to say, okay, what do the numbers say? What is the number story? Because the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie. And the question is, what are you driving? So here's what you can control. You can control the drivers. These are your actions. If we're talking about the bottom line, you go, well, my money's running out, or I don't have the money. Question is, what are you doing? You're saying, well, my outcomes are crappy, or I don't have the kind of money, or I don't have the freedom, or I'm freaked out right now. I go, okay, well, maybe you can't control the outcomes, but the outcomes come from the drivers. The outcomes come from the activity. And if we can get clear on the bottom line with whatever activities you're involved with, whatever you're thinking about. One of my good buddies has a company, and every time I seem to talk to him, he has a new line, and I'm going, these are amazing. Like, you're a creative genius, but somebody else needs to be deciding which things go to market, because the bottom line is he's got more SKUs than Amazon, it seems like. And bottom line is his revenue is definitely less than his expenses. There's no way that business works. And the numbers tell that story, but he's not focusing on the bottom line thinking. And I want to shake him like, come on, man, wake up. Like, let's look at what's really going on here. I know you love doing this thing. Great, go do your thing. Part of the thinking is, what should I not be doing? Good, let's go find somebody that actually should be doing that and bring them in. It's not just about thinking about what we should do, it's about who should be involved and who and what we should not be doing. Say the no part, like we should be doing very, very little. Remember number 2, focused? Almost everything should be not focused on. And when we're focusing on everything, or we're building up a giant amount of things that we're doing, we're going to do everything crappy. That's a huge part of bottom line. Very, very narrow. Like when, I forget the story in there, but I mean, Buffett, now you can't really use Amazon, except you can, because Amazon does everything, but they didn't start that way. They started with books. They started with one thing, and then it expanded. So the bottom line is, if you're thinking about your life, if you're looking at your numbers and you're saying, okay, what's real, then it's going to give you objective reality around your next steps. When I was going off a cliff, in the Ferrari, I remember talking to a good buddy of mine. He was my accountability partner, and I said, well, here's my expenses. I was burning $75,000 a month. Now that's a really good income for a year for most people. And there's a happiness survey or a study that says that it's around 70,000 that we peak out in happiness. Like, going beyond that, we're not getting a whole lot happier, or we're not getting twice as happy if we make 140. So I was spending 75,000 a month, not a year. And I remember the conversation. I didn't have anything left. Everything was falling off. I was losing my stuff to foreclosure. And my friend said, well, okay, you have to cut this down. And I said, okay, I got it. I cut it down. I said, I'm at 25,000. He said, you don't even have a business. Like, how are you spending 25,000? I'm like, well, that's my minimum. That's my burn rate. He goes, no, do it again. I'm like, I can't do it. The bottom line is I was stuck in the addictions to the spending and all this other stuff. One thing that we can all do right now is get really clear. And one of the strategies about getting clear is turn off all your credit cards, turn off all the auto pays, everything. Just close them all down. Get new credit card numbers. And then when you start getting emails or calls from people saying, hey, your credit card didn't work, you can say, okay, do I still want this thing? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. We are like going through motions and not even thinking. We're just spending. And the bottom line and this is our businesses and our personal lives. Our personal lives, we've got to be thinking about that. What really matters right now? Like, for a lot of us, the income is going to really, really soften or go away for not just days or weeks, but most likely months. What do we do with that? We get really clear about what we need. Cash is king right now. Cash is, you got to have liquidity. And to think, okay, well, I'm good for a month. I can't cut anything else out. Like, I got to keep all these things going. You know what? You got to make hard decisions. One of the things that I did is I wasn't willing to make hard decisions. Back in 2007, I had all these projects that started to creep. They weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. And so my answer, they'll turn around, everything will be back. The Dow will be back to 30,000 next month, right? Because they poured $2 trillion in, everything will be back. So I borrowed $1 million on my credit cards, and I kept making payments, debt payments, until, guess what? No more credit cards, no more cash. And then what did I do? Lost the houses anyway to foreclosure. I had to make a choice. It was either going to be made for me or I was going to do it in advance. And most of the time, we don't want to take the medicine. We don't want to just say, okay, you know what, rip the Band-Aid off. Medicine's not tasty. Like, who wants to just chug some really crappy NyQuil? It's not like we'd rather have some really delicious meal, but like the medicine's not fun. Sooner is better than later. It gets worse if you're not willing to do it. I know a lot of you have employees, you have team members, you have businesses, and you're thinking, what do we do? People will understand, you guys. They'll understand. If you have to let people go, if you have to furlough them, do what you can. Be compassionate, be honest, be direct. If you have investors and you can't pay them because you're like, well, I don't know if we're going to have any rent coming in and we don't know what's going to happen. Be honest and open, communicate, and be rational sooner than later. Don't do this in 3 months or 6 months. For a lot of you that have investments, you may not have any rental income. It might not be 90% of normal. It might be like 10% of normal, meaning you only have 10% of what you thought you were going to have, or you could have zero. Really important to be very pragmatic about the situation we're in. A lot of people are just saying, okay, I can't pay it or I'm not going to pay it. Think about that with your bottom line. Today, not like, oh, I'll deal with it in June. Because by the time you get there, you'll be doing what I was doing back in 2008 and in 2009 and going, oh no, I literally am out of resources, options. And the problem is when we go through this cycle, y'all are going to be sitting there trying to rebirth yourselves. You're going to be stuck. You're going to be burned out. You're going to be in pain. You're going to miss the opportunities. That was the problem. That was one of the problems I had in 2009 and 10. I completely missed all the opportunities because I was so beat up, because I didn't take the medicine. I wasn't willing to acknowledge the truth. Here is the best question ever. Write this one down, you guys. If you've read Reinvented Life, this is how it started. Ask that question, then ask it again, and then ask it again. And then when you asked it 3 or 4 or 5 times, ask somebody else, okay, here's what I think is true. What do you think is true? What is true? What am I missing? Asking what is true will help you get past all of your noise and your garbage that just keeps you stuck and mired in a bunch of lies. I thought what was true, the market was going to come back. Everything was going to be dandy. And it didn't come back. I ran out of money. I thought, oh, I'll never run out of money. I can keep borrowing. One lesson that I also learned was that credit is not wealth. Credit is just credit, and credit can be turned off. It can also bury you alive. So just because the government's offering loans doesn't mean that that's actually going to solve your problem. Great question to ask is, what is true about my business model? Is it even a profitable business model? Is more debt just going to delay the inevitable? Maybe, maybe not. These are the type of questions that either you can answer, should at least ask, or ask somebody else, hey, can you help me with this process of figuring this out? Otherwise, you might wake up in a year or two and go, yeah, why didn't I just make that decision in 2020? Like, what was I waiting for? I was waiting for what, like unicorns to come dancing onto my porch and get me out of jail? Like, you got to go into truth sooner than later. It comes down to the bottom line. What's really happening? There's a bias towards normalcy of the past. It's a cognitive bias. It's the way we think. And we tend to say, well, the future is going to be the past, which is why people thought, oh, the Dow is going to keep going up 20% a year. And for those of you that realize that doesn't happen, you have other options. You don't have to be in the freaking stock market. I know a lot of you are doing other things. You're in real estate. Well, you know what? Some of that's as speculative as the stock market. Depends on what it is. Just because it's a different asset class doesn't mean it's any less risky. It just means it's a different asset class. So if you do gold or silver, if you like that, I happen to love it. If you do it wrong, it's as risky as real estate when you're doing paper. Like, so you've got to ask questions. What is true? What is really true? And if you don't know, which, hey, look, we don't all know all this stuff. Nobody knows all of it. That's why the team members, that's why shared thinking with people that have wisdom, that have been through it before, that's why that's so valuable. Okay, so those are the 11. And I think what we're going to do next is we're going to talk about a formula for answering a question. before we get into that, let me just cruise over here and see if anybody has any questions. Okay, you guys are awesome. And by the way, there is more to come here. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Philip, what'd you say? When I watch videos on YouTube from experts, they always say how much stock market gains are in the end. No one ever mentions how long it takes to regain and how that relates to your current situation. Why? Fees, assets under management. The entire system is set up to keep you trapped. Every day, my team and I work on helping people get their money out of the stock market, and you can't even believe how entitled that system, financial advisors and the Wall Street goons, are around other people's money. They feel entitled to it. They also feel like you're too stupid, so you should keep it there. So they're always going to have a message. If you look at CNBC or any of these places, Bloomberg, they're supported by that industry. So what are they going to do? They're going to advertise stocks are great. They're not going to be saying, hey, go to cash, go buy gold, buy a piece of property. They're never going to do that. So this message is propagated. I always ask the question, where's the money going? Like if somebody's giving you information, what are they selling? Financial advisors are not selling you the truth in most of the situations that you're involved with. They're selling you some type of financial product. It's insurance or it's a stock certificate or something. They're not giving you wisdom, advice on anything outside of their stuff most of the time. There are a few good ones. I really haven't met many of those. But the reality is most of them and most people in general are selling something. So just ask, what are you selling? And if they can be really honest about it, like I had a guy that sold me life insurance one time, and I said, great, show me how much life insurance you have. He showed me his personal financial statement, showed me exactly what was going on. I knew how much money he was making, and I knew how much money he had into his life insurance. And I go, you are transparent, and I am in. And I gave him a bunch of my money. So that's unusual. What most people are going to do is they're going to say, oh, stocks have always gone up, because they're just like repeating the dogma. They're like freaking droids. So just keep that in mind when you're listening to people. Have they actually been through things? Do they make money selling on commissions? Do they make money from their investments? How are people making money that are giving you advice? If you have mentors, if you have masterminds, how are they making money? Probably from the time they're spending with you. They're not selling you something in addition to that. And if they are, great, make sure it's transparent. So just understand that's the messaging that's coming from Wall Street. All right, let's talk about QAF, questions answered formula. All right, first thing we want to know is where is the marker? What is the question? Seems pretty straightforward. Let me just double check, make sure I have lots of battery power on my stuff. We do. The question, how often do we sit there and listen to somebody and they're just talking and you're like, what are you actually asking? Like, what is going on in your brain? And people are all over the place. I've done this, and people look at me, and I love it when I'm in a mentoring group or a coach or something, and they go, okay, so they'll repeat back what I said, and I'm like, holy mackerel, that didn't even sound like anything human. That was not English. I don't know what that was. So the question is, what is the question? What are we actually trying to answer? Right now, if you're saying, okay, I'm running out of money. Okay, that's not a question. That's just a panic statement. Okay, what is the question? How much wealth do I have? How many days of money do I have? What resources do I have? When we start looking at things differently through a different lens of a different question, we have a better question, and we can process the question. If we don't have a good question, we're stuck. We're just going to sit there with our thumb in our mouth, curled up on the floor like I was in 2009 and 10, just kind of waiting, hoping that we don't die. So what is the question? What's the real question? And then the next thing is the impact and vision support. What I mean by this is you have to ask yourself, the question I'm asking, if you ask a question, you're spending a lot of time developing the answer, and it has very little or no impact on your actual life and doesn't support your vision, it just kind of is one of those things where you're noodling on it, it may be a question to throw out and just get rid of. I hear people talking about stuff and I go, does this actually matter in your life? And then I hear dribble. Yeah, it matters because, ultimately it's because of somebody's judgment. It's because we don't want to look stupid. We don't want to have somebody judge us. But a lot of the questions that we're stuck on, like, what do I do with this investment deal? Like, okay, sometimes it doesn't matter. Like, nothing. The answer is nothing. So we need to also understand, is this thing going to support your vision? When you have big picture thinking and you know where you're going, your vision is very clear. The question is that question in alignment with your vision? Is this question going to support your vision? Answering the question, is that going to actually help anything, or is it like an exercise in futility? I don't know. The third thing we want to do is to size it up. And so we've got the downsides and the upsides. We've got the unknown. We've got the likely and the unlikely. So upsides, we've got likely upsides on the question. If we're asking specifically, we'll talk about investing in like a piece of real estate. What are the likely upsides to, should I invest in this thing? Okay, well, what are the likely upsides? What are the unlikely upsides? Like, is this property going to double in a month? That's pretty unlikely. What are the unknowns? Could the Federal Reserve drop interest rates to -5? You know, that's an unknown. Like it's hard to figure that out. What's more important is the unknowns over here on the downside. Like a black swan. This is the danger event. The black swans, things that we're not thinking about. I wasn't thinking about what could happen if the mortgage industry blew up in 2007 and 2008, because I had no experience in going through a down market. So that thing ate my lunch. What I was thinking was likely, unlikely, downside. So I remember some of my properties, and I had these things like the Memphis deal, where the likely downside was I was only going to make 10% a year. The unlikely was that I would maybe lose money, but that was unlikely. And the unknowns, I don't know. I was too inexperienced to have any idea what the unknowns were. So doing the pros and the cons, just sizing it up. This is also called a sensitivity study, where you're figuring out likely scenario, most likely, not very likely, and then like these black swan events. Just having clarity on those things. Okay, so if there is a very bad situation, like all of a sudden 90% of your tenants stop paying, how much reserves do you have? Do you have 1 month of reserves? That means that you're bankrupt in less than 90 days. Liquidity becomes very important. So a lot of these questions, it's going to be about liquidity. I'm going to go into, after this, we're going to go into an example that you all sent in. Several of you asked questions. We're going to talk about those questions, and you're going to realize a lot of it has to do with liquidity. And then we need to look at the emotions. And the two emotions that drive us are fear and greed. So when we're looking at a question, the thing that comes up that a lot of you are looking at, you go, well, this deal, I think it's going to make like 35% in 6 months. And that's part of your greed glands, because usually there's not a lot of factual basis for that happening. It's just, that's what the story says. And then there's the fear around maybe not doing it. And you're like, well, I'm going to lose all my money. And so because we don't want to believe the fear, we don't want to believe the downside, we tend to go into the greed, and that's where we get taken advantage of. So asking better questions and then having perspective. I'm really clear on this stuff way more than I was 12 years ago, because I went through it. Most of the people that I talk to haven't been through this, so they're missing pieces because of the lack of experience. And the last 10 years was not complete experience. That was a bull market. That wasn't downs. Even if you had something that lost money, that was not a downturn. This is a downturn. This is something where you need perspective and you need shared thinking. All right, number 5. Okay, this is other answers and what else. So when you're asking a question and you're thinking about something, if what I prefer, if somebody has a problem and they come to me, like when I mentor or have masterminds, if you have a problem, the question is, what are 3 possible answers? What are 3 possible solutions? Because you'll tend to have to go into another part of your brain that's not the most obvious, and it'll force you to think. And if you say, well, I got 2, I'll say, great, what else? And if you say, I don't know, I'll say, well, if you did know, like I'll say, okay, let's pretend. If I did know, what might it be? And we go, oh, well, if I did know, it might be this third thing. So it gets us to a place where we start tapping into our creative reserves and we tap into all the other stuff, not just the most obvious. Other answers help us think better when we're not just going, oh, this is the answer, when we're just trying to process or come up with the truth. Ask, what else? If somebody says, well, here's my thing, and you go, okay, just keep asking me what else. If you're brainstorming with someone, say, okay, I'm trying to figure this out, and when I finish telling you what my answer is, just ask me what else. Don't let me off the hook. You'll find that there's more stuff trapped in you, more solutions, and it's like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Okay, what else? Interesting question. Not very complicated, but super dynamic. Okay, last time. So number 6, this is the experience and the wisdom. And the question here is, what happened last time this situation was upon us? If you're trying to figure out what to do with your kids and they're making you crazy, and you go, okay, what happened last time this problem was solved? Okay, I don't have any idea because my kids are crazy. Like, I've seen that before, and people are stressed out and they're like, I don't know what the solution is. Well, who else has had an experience that you can leverage from? Go back and model. It's about modeling. I mean, truly, modeling can change your life. So it's how you do something, and it's who you get leverage from with their experiences. Okay, the masses, what are they thinking? As I said before, this is oftentimes about being contrarian. Whatever they're doing, do the opposite. If the masses are out there thinking, I have a lot of people right now that are saying, hey, how do I invest my retirement money into the stock market? And I'm going, well, here's how you do it. Why? Why are you doing that? Oh, because it's down. I want to buy it on the down. I'm like, well, what if it's going to 10,000? Have you thought about that? No, couldn't possibly do that. Really? Because what happened in 2008 and 2009? Did it not retract 60%? I mean, hello. Most of us don't have an experience for like goldfish. It's like we always see is the last year or the last 10 years. We're actually not looking back in history. You want to predict the future? Go back deeper in history. So if the masses are thinking something and they're listening to bubbleheads on CNBC, that's great. Maybe do the opposite. And this is an exceptionally valuable question to society. We all need to be thinking about this right now. It's really important, given the level of fear and anxiety and panic. What would serve the most? So if you're thinking about the solution, if you're thinking about the answer to your question, ask yourself, what answer would serve the most people? And if you're trying to figure out what you're going to invest in, if you're thinking about what business you're going to do, what job you're going to do, how can you serve the most people? If you're thinking, well, this one's good because I don't have to do anything. I can drink pina coladas. Guess what? The universe is going to be done with you because you're not really serving anything. Now, pina coladas can be a good side effect if you're out there serving a lot of people and the money is being created because of that. How are you serving more people? It's a spiritual question. How are you serving people the most? With your answers, it'll just get you to tap into something else instead of just saying, well, the return on investment is this. It's not just about the profits, it's about the people, and it's about the purpose. Why are you doing it, and how do you serve the most? And then the last thing with how we answer the formula, or answer the questions in the formula, is FOMO versus forward movement versus pass. And I would put hard pass. So one of the questions is, are we afraid we're going to miss out on something? Is there a fear of missing out? One of my buddies said this the other day, and he goes, oh my gosh, I realized I was in FOMO. And he started laughing at himself. And I cracked up and I go, yeah, I mean, I've been there. You're like, oh, I got to get this deal. I got to get the deal. I'm going to miss the deal. It's the only deal of my life. Dr. Roos used to say this. It was like the deal of a lifetime comes around about every week, or the deal of a decade. Like, there are plenty of deals. And sometimes forward movement is literally making a decision and saying, nope, pass. Sometimes it's saying, yes, I'm in. But this whole FOMO thing, where if we don't get this deal, if we don't do this thing, then our life's over. And I heard somebody, and I'm not going to share his name, but we were talking about a deal he was going to do, and it was about $50,000 that he wanted to invest in this deal. And I said, okay, so what are you thinking? And he said, well, I think it's a good deal. And I said, how do you know? He goes, well, I mean, I'm supposed to get my money back in, 8 months or something. And I said, okay, so that's the anticipation, and anything can be written into a prospectus, private placement memorandum, pitch deck, whatever you want to call it. I said, so you're supposed to do that. And that's based on what's been happening the last few years. So I would say you're probably just as likely to watch your $50,000 go away. And he said, well, yeah, that could happen, but I just feel like I'm stalled. I'm not doing anything. And so I said, okay, so you've got fear of missing out and no forward movement. And I said, okay, so you've got that. How much are you going to learn in this deal? And he said, well, that's the good thing. They told me that they would teach me as I'm going along in this deal. And I said, okay, well, you're going to probably learn something there. Very different if you're actually driving the deal versus you're in the back seat just kind of watching what's going on, because you don't have to make the decision. You're not going to actually develop the emotional intelligence by being in the back seat. Emotional intelligence will come from you driving deals, having to make decisions. The other question is, how long does it take for you to create $50,000? And for most of us, we look at 50,000 and we go, okay, well, I had to make $100,000 for 4 years to have enough to save, and it built it up. So if that 50 just goes away and you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, which is how you got to where you are, it takes you 4 years to get that money back to go work. You got to give 4 years of your life to get that 50. What about, like, my big mistake, one of them? I have a whole lot of those mistakes. It's how we grow, right? Saying, I'm going to pass and chill. That will give you the opportunity to have your cash. It's called dry powder. It gives you that opportunity to have that money when the deals get really juicy. Because I guarantee you the deals are going to get juicier. They're going to get better. Same thing happened in 2007 and 8. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to go in. I went in. I ended up getting crushed. And I watched a lot of the houses I had sold in 05 and 06. I watched them drop 50 to 80%. 50 to 80%. So a house that was 160, I watched that sucker sell for 40,000 a year and a half later. So somebody try to tell me that this doesn't happen. Tell me that the market, it can't happen. This was in Phoenix. Phoenix, great market. Happened in Miami. Happened in Dallas. Happened all over the place. There are examples where hard pass, going on vacation, bunkering out, hanging out and playing card games in your house will be the best investment you can ever make if you're willing to be patient. But this FOMO, which is fear of missing out, brutal, because we tend to go, I got to get in. Like, why? What is a year going to cost you? Here is the big value. Here is what I recommend you invest in. Everybody's asking right now, like, not everybody, almost everybody, what do I invest in? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Here's the one thing universally I can tell you that you should and you must invest in now. Ready? Personal development. It is the absolute best investment you will ever make in your life, better than any real estate, better than any stock, better than any mutual fund, better than gold. It's the best because it'll rewire you. Your level of wealth financially will never exceed your level of personal development. If you have a developed mind and heart and soul and spirit that says you're at X level and you find a deal that's a no-brainer up here, you will get it and you will lose it. I promise you. It's 100% true. There is no exception. Win the lottery, what happens? Boom, fall back down or below where you already were. It doesn't work to create wealth if your development isn't at that same level. So what's your job? Take that $50,000 and build the crap out of your soul. Like, go out there, hire mentors, get into a mastermind. Like, not just to learn techniques for real estate. My God, that is not the point. It's not about the tools. It's about you. It's about the people you're around. Rewire your brain. Have different conversations. Remember the shared thinking where you're around people? Start being around people where your thinking shifts because you're around them. That's part of personal development. 20 years ago, when I got really into this, I didn't have anybody around me that thought I was sane, and it was kind of lonely. So what did I do? I was like, well, I went to the used bookstore and bought basically every tape they had there. All the Tony Robbins, the Zig Ziglars. I go to a seminar and I'd buy everybody's stuff, and I consumed it, and then I started doing things with it. And it was really fascinating because I was one of the few people. I'd buy these tapes and CDs when CDs started being available. I'd buy them and they'd be in sealed packages. I'm like, somebody bought this thing. It was hundreds of dollars. And they just stared at it. Don't go buy personal development and don't do anything with it. If you're going to join a mastermind, be a rock star. Go into that thing and do lots of homework. Come with lots of questions. Contribute. You will find your life changes when you go in with that intention. If you go, okay, what's this going to do for me? Like if you come to my mastermind and you join and you're like, okay, what am I going to get? You're not coming in. I'm going to kick you out. Your job is to come in and go, how can I contribute? Because I want to grow. That's how this works. Your thinking will shift if you have that type of intention. It's a different question. How can I contribute? Not what can I get here? Personal development, best investment ever. Best returns ever. There is no exception, I promise. Let's go through each of these. So each of these is part of the 11 thinkings. So we're gonna identify them. The impact and the vision. This is the big picture. Size it up. We got realistic, popular, and possibility. This taps in other answers. What else? This taps into your creative thinking. You have to go find the Crayola answers. Oh, last time, reflective. And sometimes this is popular. The masses, this is popular. Last time with others, that's shared. FOMO versus forward movement versus hard pass. This is the bottom line. What would serve the most? This is unselfish. This formula covers all the 11 thinkings inside of John Maxwell's book. This is way more dynamic than what is my return going to be on the real estate. Like, you're missing out on all sorts of opportunity to make a better choice, to think differently, to think better, to have good thinking. Changing your thinking through a formula will give you guys insights and clarity that will shift you from the chaos in these times of uncertainty. It's a formula. It literally will work for anything. Let me grab a couple of the questions that you guys had that you emailed in. And let me check and see if there's anything else over here. Question. Any tips for dealing with negative or dysfunctional thinking from people you can't get away from? Is this your husband? Just kidding, just kidding. No, if you can't get away from him, the question is, why can't you get away from him? Because ultimately we're making a choice. And I'm talking, I'll be hard about this. If it's a spouse, if it's a teammate, if it's a client, why can't you get away from them? Fire them. If it's somebody that's dysfunctional or negative and they happen to be a team member, fire them. If it's your spouse, you might have to fire them. I mean, ultimately it's your choice. You have the power to choose. Great book, J. Martin Co. The greatest power is the power to choose. So negative and dysfunctional thinking that's in your life, you're choosing it. So why are you choosing negative thinking to be around you? I mean, what does that say about you? Are you addicted to it? Do you like the drama? Are you afraid of being judged? Are you afraid? There's a fear that's going on that keeps that close. What if I fired this client? Is it 50% of the revenue? Oh my gosh, what do I do? You know what? You're going to open up space for positive. It's going to shift the entire culture. So whatever it is, whatever negativity you have, be really honest with yourself. Why am I keeping this in? Why do I need to have this in my life? What is it serving? And you might not love the answer. The truth is, it's always a choice. I mean, unless you're in prison, and I don't think they're live casting this into San Quentin or any of these other prisons. So is it a shackle? I mean, that's what we do a lot in our lives. We keep things going, and we're in weird times. I get it. A lot of us are just stuck sort of in our homes, and it may be a temporary thing, but the truth is most of us this is not a corona issue. This is more of this is how we've been doing things. And so we keep these negative influences. How do we get rid of them? Cut them. Cut them. You'll open up space. When Warren Buffett talks about saying no to almost everything, that includes negativity. It includes, you just have to be willing to say, no, I'm sorry. Do the right thing. You don't serve anybody, guys, if you're surrounded by negativity and it just buries you, because your spirit's going to be crushed. And how much value are you to anybody if you're not willing to protect your heart and your spirit and give that to the world? You're not of any use. So a better decision, because you are of use if you have something to give. But if you're just destroyed, it doesn't really help anything. Anybody else on here before I answer some questions? All right. So one of the questions, we are about to undertake a major renovation for an investment project. We've spent about 40% of the budget, but could halt the work and continue later. We're using our own cash. Should we conserve our cash until things level out? And we're not going to sell the house for a year and a half. We'd like to get done and have the cash, but other passive income streams might actually dry up. Do we continue with our investment strategy or pause it and see what happens? My suggestion for everybody is to get really, really clear on your cash, meaning keep it dry. Don't spend it all. Keep it. Y'all are going to need liquidity. You're going to need cash for doing things, operating. Assume that this is going to go on for 6 months, that we're going to be bunkered, that our life is going to be disrupted. And if it's not 6 months and it turns into 3, great. Planning for 6 or more, I think is very, very useful for you to ask questions. What would I need to do to not blow up my life financially over the next 9 months? And ask that question. And here's the questions that came up for this individual. I said, question I would ask is, should we stop work and the outflow? Okay, so that's the question. Should we stop it? Should we stop the work? What impact is it going to have? There's upside, there's downside. The upside of stopping is there's no more cash going out. The downside is it's going to delay getting this stuff done. So if you think about the other side of this, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. And there's also going to be a lot of pain if in the middle of it you run out of money. So right now the question is, will this impact your cash? If your investments stop paying over the next 6 months, and a lot of you guys are going to have it happen, it's not because any of the operators are necessarily bad people. It just means, like in 2008, everything crashed. And so things go sideways. Payments stop. So if you're counting on those things, it's not all unicorns and puppy dogs, you guys. Like, after having gone through this multiple times where things crash, if it goes down, if your money stops, hey, that's part of the risk. It does happen. Not everything goes exactly according to plan. Some of the best, smartest people in the world that I know of in this industry have made very, very adult, mature decisions. I have not seen it from most people that are sending newsletters out. I saw it from Tom. Tom sent a letter out to his investors and his entire list, and he said, here's where we're at. Here's where we see the economy. Here's what we expect to happen. We're being very mindful of our cash. And it was unbelievably clear and respectful, and the tone was fantastic. And he point blank said, the distributions are not going to continue until we're clear on where this is going. He was being mindful of making sure the projects survived and that they thrived long term, not just this month. As an investor, one of your jobs is to maintain a rational mind and not lose your shit if somebody says, hey, we're not going to be able to pay this month. It may be a few months. Don't freak out. I mean, the whole damn economy is frozen. So keep that in mind. You don't have to be frozen. You can go do other things. But if nobody's paying at an apartment complex or something and someone says, hey, no distributions for this month or this quarter, or we don't know when, say, okay, I get it. They'll figure it out if they're going to figure it out. It does not help for you to yell at them and say, you better give me my money. Like, you're not entitled to it. You're entitled to whatever the profits are. You're entitled to it if it works, but I think we're just irrational about what we think we're owed a lot of times. So the answer to this is a question. Is the cash that you're putting into this deal for your rehab, if everything else went away, do you have other cash? Or if this is all your cash, maybe it's not a great idea to pour your cash into something that may be sitting for a while. So my question is, bottom line thinking, what does this do to your cash position? And I would ask, if your cash flow investments stop paying until 2021, like nothing happens this year, are you okay? do you still have all the cash you need for whatever you're going to do? And if the answer is no, be really, really mindful of whether or not you think you need to do this project and keep it going. So liquidity, my friends, is a big deal right now. Okay, next question. Besides stock market, what are other safer ways we could be investing during turbulent times such as right now? Personal development. And you know what? You could make money or you could lose money in real estate, stock market, precious metals. I don't know what the answer is. I know where I'm putting my money, but that has nothing to do with, there are plenty of people making money and losing money in every possible category right now. So the one place that you will 100% get a return is personal development. If you think you've done enough, you haven't. If you think that there's nothing left for you, trust me, there's more. Find people that are way past where you are and let them stretch you. Open up, be vulnerable, say, hey, I'm stuck. I'm just like, even if you're stuck in a good way, this is what I would invest in. Absolutely, without a doubt, it will change everything. And if you still want to go invest in something outside of this, the question I would ask you is, what are 3 safe options that you can come up with? And it'll make you think about, okay, how could this be safe? Like you can literally invest in gold and do it safely, and you can do it with a lot of risk. There are different ways to do it. Same with real estate, same with the stock market. So it's how you do it. It's not the investment, it's the operator, it's the investor. And then tap into other people's brains. Masterminds, forums. I don't like forums as much as I like masterminds. I don't like bulletin boards because random people throw their crap out there as if it's sage advice. And I look at it and I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about. You've been an investor for 12 minutes. Oh, I'm sorry, 12 months. Same thing. You're a baby investor. Oh, sorry, 5 years. Wow. A whole half of a bull market. Like that doesn't say anything. What I want to know is from people that are in a space where it's a connected, trusted space, what are they thinking? What's their perspective? That's what I would go look for. I would find that. Whatever resonates with you, find people that you trust and respect. I would find a lot of time to spend in those environments. With so much uncertainty in the world, should we continue to invest as usual? We have money sitting in our EQRP and we'd like to have it start working for us. I am new to this, so the question would be, what are the best things to invest in at this time? I know there are deals coming down the pipeline. Thus the question is, should we wait? So the question I have, based on your question, is you'll find that my experience with mentors and coaches, the best ones out there have the best questions. They very rarely have answers. Even when they know the answer, they're pulling it out of you so that you can buy into it, so that you get it. They don't want to just give you things. They're teaching you how to fish, because if you can go, okay, how do I think about this? It makes you stronger. So my suggestion would be invest in personal development. If you have a retirement account, a couple of things changed with the CARES Act on Friday, where you can actually tap into it. You can take up to $100,000 out, and if you want to, you can pay it back over 3 years. No taxes, no penalty, just pay it back. So if you want to go out there and you want to invest in some programs to expand your thinking, some coaching programs, some seminars, it's all virtual now pretty much, to learn how to do real estate or stocks or whatever you're going to do, start a business, which I think is amazing because you're going to learn more there than you probably will with anything else, starting a business. Tap into your money. This gives you an option to tap into it. You've got resources. If you don't feel like you know enough to go do the right deal right now, what it tells me is that this will be the ideal thing for you to invest in for the next 6 to 12 months. On the other side of that, what you'll find is that there are deals all over the place. And it doesn't even matter if it's back in a bull market, if we're through the bear, or if we're still in a depression, which I think it will be. It matters that you are able to see things through a different lens. That's the point of doing this work. A deal could be good or bad. It could be the same deal and it's good for you and it's bad for somebody else. It's risky for you, but it's actually safe for them. It has nothing to do with the deal. Again, it's about you. So think about that. 2021, I think, could be the best time to invest in this generation. It could also be too soon. What I don't think is that now is the best time compared to what we'll see, because we don't even know what we're dealing with yet. We don't know how much carnage there's going to be. We're like, a lot of things are up in the air. So I'm not good enough to be able to predict that and say, oh yeah, I can pick this thing that will be totally stable in 3 months. And the question also is with like real estate things, can they even close right now? We don't know. So in that time, don't be afraid of FOMO, of the fear of missing out. Just think about taking a breath and focus on your personal development. Really important. If you're saying, okay, I still want to invest in something, educate yourself on this stuff. Get some books on real estate. Learn about the stock market. Read Benjamin Graham. Read Warren Buffett's book. If you want to understand about metals, get a copy of Gold and Silver. Grab a copy of my book on Amazon. Get a copy of Mike Maloney's book on Amazon. Get those 2 books and you'll have the essence of what you need to know in that space. Just educate yourself. I mean, that is the most important thing you guys can do right now. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions you guys have. Julie, you are very welcome. Thank you for saying that. You know, it's really strange when you have a blackboard that you can't write on, but we're going to change that. We're going to put this back here. And if you have any other questions, I can see your questions right now. Throw them up there. I'll answer them right now, real time. I do want to give you some other things that are other resources. Let's see. So we're going to do another session, a live event, in 2 weeks. It's going to be same time, Sunday, the 7th. Wait, sorry, the 12th, April. And it's on Reinvented Life. Now, some of you are going to recognize this because this was a book I wrote in 2012. I'm doing this session to go through the book. So if you want to do your homework in advance, you get a lot more out of it because we're going to go deep into it. When things get uprooted and your lives are like all over the place, one of the things you're going to have to do, many of you, I mean, I'm doing this right now with a lot of stuff, reinventing it. And there's a process to go through. It's an internal reinvention, which leads to an external reinvention. Most of us go, okay, I need to downsize my house, or I need to learn a new tool, or get a new job, or invest in something else. That's part of it, but that's actually the second part. So I'm going to dig into this with you guys. It's going to be at same time, 3:30 Pacific. And if you want any of the stuff I'm going to share with you, really simple, just text, and some of you have already done this, so you'll get it, but text tribe to 72,000, and it'll get you on the list, so you know about these things. Feel free to share that with people if you think this would be valuable content for them. So another thing, the 1522, this is the mastermind that I'm doing. And it's basically a way for us to get together for small groups, about 15 of us, to be able to connect and work together every month and really work on shared thinking so that y'all have some place to go and you can share and you can also participate and then get help from other people at the same time. That's circulation. So same thing, if you're interested, you can text tribe and you'll get more information about that. We're going to continue doing these type of trainings, and just I'm going to share what you guys need, what I think you need, and what you ask for. So if you have more things that you want, I'll put this stuff together. One of the valuable things about being hunkered and bunkered and quarantined is that it took many hundreds of hours of transitioning, and I'm taking that and asking, okay, why did this happen for me? It happened for me to give me space and time to be able to create and deliver my experiences to help you guys, to lift you up, to break those shackles. So I'm going to keep doing this, and this is going to be, we're going to do this, it's going to be at least monthly. And then I'm going to shift it. There's going to be another opportunity to have it a lot more interactive with you guys. So that's coming. And then the last thing, when we get past this season, and I look at this as winter, I don't look at this as a blizzard. I think it's a great analogy for the people that are saying that. We are going to move past this. After winter, there's spring, and then there's summer again. It's great to be retooled. It's great to be ready for it, to have a plan, to have your foundation built, And so one of the things that is useful is to actually have an entire plan around developing financial literacy and financial mastery. And if you guys want to do that so that during this winter you have this, you're building this and you're learning this stuff, the Black Belt Wealth program could be something to look at. All this stuff you guys can find on DamionLupo.com. Feel free to check it out. Text Tribe if you are interested at all. You guys know how to reach me. Let me see if there's any other questions I can answer. Thanks, LeBrent. Appreciate that. Recommended continued reading that goes into more details on these thought processes. Or we be publishing a book on this someday? It's a great question. Definitely read John's book. I say that like we're buddies. I have actually never met him, but I recommend this book. I've read it 3 times, and it's time to read it again. There's so much. I mean, this guy's awesome. Failing Forward is another one of his. Anna Reid, Failing Forward. Great book by John Maxwell. His stuff is, there's a lot of biblical inside of it, and he meshed a lot of things with business, so they're principle-based. I like principle-based books. It's one of the things I'm doing now is focusing on principle-based books and less on current stuff. So things like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, really important. As a Man Thinketh, Think and Grow Rich, Richest Man in Babylon. I'm going to read Rich Dad Poor Dad again for about the 20th time, just going back to these fundamental things. And then some of like the Eckhart Tolle books, and really making sure it's not just about money, that it's about relationships, focusing on the holistic picture. The best way I can recommend digging into the holistic picture of your life to build it is through the Lifebook program. Many of you have done that. Wendy and Dave and I have been through that. John and Missy Butcher, who created that program, are dear friends. And if you want to explore all of this, one of the chapters in there is the intellectual life. It's your intellectual life. You'll spend time building that out. This is more comprehensive, I think, than that, because it forces you to have formulas and it goes deeper. John Maxwell, it's an entire book on just that one formula. It's a very well done, comprehensive program that Mind Valley has on their platform. So definitely would recommend that. And Philip, I will definitely get you guys a copy of this so you can watch it again. Question is right now a good time to sell your primary home if you have $300,000 in equity? Harry Dent and Robert Kiyosaki did an episode a couple weeks ago on Rich Dad. Listen to that and listen to what Harry says. I happen to agree with him. He's smarter than I am. He's also been around this planet a number of, like, almost twice as many times. I think he's about 70, at least in his mid to late 60s. And he would say right now you're probably peaking in terms of the real estate. The millennials are buying smaller, or they're bunkering. They're bunking up, and they're not going to, the McMansions that are out there, these bigger houses are less likely to be bought. They're being bought less. And so McMansions, people are, the reality is the baby boomers and beyond, before that, are dying, and these big houses aren't being picked up in the same way. So the equity that you have, the question is, what are you going to do with it? If you're going to have dry powder, that's interesting. I happen to like the strategy of renting, because it keeps your powder dry. And I think Grant Cardone said this a while back, rent where you live and then buy what you rent out. And so just, think about that a little bit. And at the same time, on the other side of that coin, it's pretty nice when you own your place and you don't have to mess with a landlord, and banks are pretty much faceless. So just think about where your assets are. If you're looking at your portfolio, you've got a percentage that's in your home equity, and you've got a percentage in other things. If your home equity, like most Americans, is 50, 60, 70, 80% of your net worth, I'd be really thinking about whether that was a smart play on your portfolio. Most people have their equity, maybe a 401k, and that's kind of it, if they're lucky. Most people, their 401k is only like $60,000 when they're 60 years old. So be mindful of it. I would talk to somebody that's not selling anything and just go through that. Happy to talk to you, do a strategy session, and just dig into those numbers. I don't really have anything to sell you around that. It's just a way to ask questions. So I'll just ask you questions until you beg for mercy. So let me know. Let's see what else. So apparently this is Easter. So thank you for putting that out, Laura. Why don't we do this? We'll make that the 19th of April. And so it's now going to be the 19th. We'll do some stuff in the meantime, but I appreciate the insight. And let's see, supposed to be taking a year off from teaching. And next year it's to help my son. And we were going to jump into our multifamily investing. We were prepared, but my husband is a residential realtor, thinking I should wait, but don't want to make a fear-based decision. We'll be taking all this to heart and reading Maxwell's book. Do you have any thoughts? I love my students, but there are negative components that suck my life, heart, and creativity. Yeah, I bet. You know, the educational system is rough. The kids are awesome. We love the kids. I always think it's stupid when somebody says, you just don't care about the kids, when somebody is like trying to figure out how to adjust the educational system. I'm like, who doesn't care about the kids? That's such a dumb thing to say. But I can also see how it'd be stressful. My thinking is that residential real estate could be very, very painful. It's possible that it's going to be very rough. It also could be a huge opportunity if you pivot. So I think there's a book called Pivot that I have not read, but it'd be a great title. Somebody picked it. Anyhow, thinking about this stuff, look at the big picture over the next, say, 18 months. So now to the end of 2021, think about that stuff. Do you have liquidity? Do you have the ability to not be teaching? If you were to teach, could you do it differently? Could you do it virtually? I met a gal about 4 months ago that was selling she and her family were selling children's books to schools. And, you know, they were making like $40-50 million a year selling children's books. Thinking bigger, the question, how do you serve more people, is a key fundamental question. I think one of the things that holds a lot of school teachers back is that they go, and I'm not saying this is you, I'm just saying that this happens a lot, that they're upset that they don't make more money. The reality is you can make unbelievable amounts of money if you just use your creative thinking to think about serving more people. So there's ways to do that, and I don't know what all of them are. I don't even know if I know of any of them, but there are a ton, and because everything is going virtual, look for opportunities in that space and see what you can find. You might be able to do real estate and teaching. Teaching is amazing. There is the number of dollars that are spent on education right now, virtual education, and it's staggering. So if you can find a way to take your wisdom, and as a teacher, I bet you have some wisdom that could be shared. So just think about that a little bit, how you can serve more people, and see if there's an opportunity there, and look at your bottom line liquidity, your cash. See if that can hold up during the transition. And again, we can do a strategy session and dig into the numbers if you guys want to. And comment, spent the last year and a half in personal development, still lots of growth. Always, I've been doing this for 20-some years, and I'm like a baby. So trust me, and it doesn't stop. Stops when you're dead. Question about the mastermind. If you're interested in the mastermind, just text Tribe and reach out to me. We can talk about it. It's basically going to be an interactive small group, 15 people. They get together every month, and it's all going to be virtual until we're able to connect, and then we'll get together a couple times a year and do some training, financial and physical self-defense, and some other training. So those are all available right now if you guys are interested. Let's see. I appreciate you guys being here. And if also text Tribe. If some of you found this through an email and things, if you want to know about what I'm doing, this is how we generally get the information out to you. So text the word Tribe to 72,000. It will allow you to get a text message when we do events. I don't beat you up on your phone, but what I do is tell you things like, hey, it's going to be the 19th of April. Most of us are missing emails, and they might not go through, but the text will get through. So text Tribe to 72,000. And let's see. You know, you guys, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you hanging out with me on Sunday, and it means a lot that y'all are doing something beyond just obsessing around the news and being stuck, that you're thinking about your thinking, and that you invited me into your homes and your phones and everything. I just appreciate you guys being there. I appreciate you giving me something to be able to spend my time doing to serve you. And if you can think of anything, think of anything that I might be able to do to help. If you'd like to help co-create that, I would love the support. I would love your contribution, and I'd love to be able to give that back to you. So thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you guys on the 19th or wherever I see you. And again, thank you so much. Have a great Sunday and be safe. We'll see you guys really soon.